The world that James Bond moves in is a very special one, and creating that world requires a special vision. Since 1981, the man most responsible for that vision is Peter Lamont.
Peter Lamont, very good set designer.
An extraordinarily talented artist.
Well, the quality of the sets are quite spectacular.
He's an expert. I mean, what he does, Peter, is fantastic, quite fantastic.
An extremely experienced and professional designer.
What that fellow doesn't know about what is required for a Bond movie isn't worth knowing.
Peter is perfect for Bond movies. Peter grew up through his early years being in a film family.
My dad was a sign writer at Denham Studios.
We moved to Denham just before the war, before I was born.
Well, I won a scholarship, an art scholarship.
Lots of the local people worked at the studios because it was like the local factory.
There was conscription in those days. Spent 2 years in the services.
I met Peter here when I came back from the service.
Fortunately, there was one person left in the art department who knew that I had been in the art department before I'd gone into the services, and through that I got into the union, and I then became a junior draftsman.
He was progressing through the art department, through the various grades, draftsman. I worked with him as a set decorator.
I left Pinewood and I went over to Beaconsfield Studios with another friend of mine, and I was set decorator over there for many years.
In 1963, Lamont receives an opportunity too good to pass up.
A friend of mine called me out of the blue and said, would I like to come on to Goldfinger? He said, it's a James Bond film. From Russia With Love had just come out. And I can remember getting in line and going to the cinema and was absolutely knocked out. So I joined Goldfinger. I went in on the first morning and I didn't even know how much money I was going to earn. I remember saying to somebody, I said, you know, kind of what money am I on? And they said, oh, well, you'll have to ring Stanley Sopel. And he said, oh, yes, Peter. He said, let me see. And I go, yeah, we got you down for 40 for 5. Before I got to the studio, to the Bond, I was only earning 32.50, you know, and I thought, my God, you know, this is living.
Lamont shares his good fortune with his younger brother, Michael.
Peter said, look, we're taking on some more trainees. And I went for an interview and that's how I got into movies.
Production designer Ken Adam wastes no time giving Lamont a baptism by fire.
They were two young draftsmen, you see, and I put the fear of God into them.
Ken Adam came in and he said, well, I don't know you, but he gave me this kind of big folders of photographs of the exterior of Fort Knox and said, well, perhaps you tackle this. There were no measurements, just odd little bits of information from the little bits of paperwork that Fort Knox gave him.
Ken Adam keeps the young draftsman's success from going to his head.
A little bit my sadistic mind, because I said to Peter, you know, you cheated me on that set. It is out of scale with the actual Fort Knox.
I can remember taking my brother up there, we'd put our cars into position, coming back and looking, and I was quite certain we were right.
He nearly had a heart attack, but it wasn't true. You know?
In the end, Lamont's exterior of Fort Knox proves absolutely convincing to cinema goers the world over.
Harry Saltzman came up and said, look, we've got a big programme, you know, I'd like you to come on the next picture we're going to do. So I joined Ipcress File. After that, Thunderball came up.
I think you got the point.
It was always an honour to get asked back to do another one, and a pleasure to be on one, because there was always going to be something exciting to do.
Ken Adam came into the art department one day and he said, OK, children, we're going to the Bahamas, so you better learn to swim underwater.
Peter and myself both took a diving course because we knew we'd got some sets to do underwater.
They wanted another shot of a person coming up in the Vulcan where he comes to get Domino's brothers' dog tags. They couldn't get anybody, and they said, well, you know what to do, you do it. So there is just one quick shot right of me, right at the end, where I took the tags off.
Peter Lamont and his brother Michael soon realize they're connected with the most popular film series in the world.
I think when Thunderball came up, we all suddenly realised that we were on something a bit special.
Lamont's next 007 assignment is You Only Live Twice.
Vernon Dixon did all the interior sets, and I dealt with the volcano.
I would have been 6, and I just remember that volcano with that huge rocket in the middle of it, out on the back lot. It was just incredible. From that point on, I just would go to the studios all the time.
It was a pretty tremendous set. A lot of work went into it.
We lived just across the road in Pinewood Green from the studios, and my dad, Peter, always took me into the studios, or I volunteered or asked, please, can I go with you at the weekend?
Lamont contributes to Blofeld's apartment inside the volcano.
The bridge collapsed. I drew that set. It had to let down, and I think Karen Dorr then went into the water when she went across.
For On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Lamont serves as set decorator for production designer Sid Kane.
We'd finally got the Chiltern ready. Peter Hunt arrived, and I remember he got off the cable car, and Peter said to me, what should we do?
I went up really to look what the whole scene looked like.
I said, I should think you ought to come to the Chiltern now, because you'll never, ever see this again. It's fully operational, and there's no lamps or anything. It's just as the set.
He said, this is the best it'll ever look, you know, meaning by the time we got in there and the camera was there and the lights were there and we moved part of this around and part of that around, it would never again look to the eye as you enter it exactly what he'd done for me.
It was a wonderful evening. The sun was going down and it looked spectacular.
I said, it looks wonderful. And I was immediately beginning to think of the scenes that I was going to shoot there. And he said, I think you better have a drink.
And I said, you know, you name it, the bar's live. It's the real thing.
He was terrific. He really was marvellous.
007.
The next Bond adventure finds Lamont again working for Ken Adam.
Welcome to hell, Blofeld.
In Ian Fleming's Diamonds Are Forever.
When Ken started, it was going to be solely made in the United States. At that time, they didn't have a James Bond. And at that time, I was going on my way to do Fiddler on the Roof as set decorator.
Top Hole. My dad worked on Fiddler on the Roof, and that was like, wow, there's that man who sort of walked around that set doing that, and it was just absolutely incredible.
I was called into the studio to see Ken Adam, and he said, look, I have an art director, would you like to be set decorator? So I said, yeah, fine, I'd love to be.
Lamont is given the task of recreating the Las Vegas skyline on a Pinewood soundstage.
In those days, Las Vegas was much smaller than it is today. There was just the one strip. A lot of animated lights, you know, electric signs like you've never seen.
It was decided that we would do a backing with lots of little P lights, and we would make up little shapes where there were very strong signs like the dunes or whatever. This was really impressive when it was all put together.
Jack Maxted happened to be the art director, and there's a little tip I learned from him. The one thing that you always notice in Las Vegas were the twinkling lights.
We put a couple of black gauzes in front of the backing and blew a fan across these gauzes, which gave it that incredible twinkle.
And Guy Hamilton came on the set and he said, fellas, I can't tell you, this is absolutely amazing. He said, this is much better than Las Vegas.
Lamont becomes art director for Sleuth, then returns as co-art director on Live and Let Die, again working under Sid Kane.
Sid asked me if I'd like to be one of the location art director on Live and Let Die. We were working up in Harlem. There was a piece of derelict ground and all these kind of tenements were all derelict. And I know, Guy came and he said, this is great, but he said, you see all those big festoons of wires? I think they look great. You know, when we come to shoot it, one of you get some of the festoons of wires over here. So I said, sure. So I got the boys round there and they got ladders and they cut all these wires down, you see, and we got into position. And just before we shot, some fellas came round with hard hats on, a gold one, and he said, I'm from the telephone company. He said, you know, we've had a lot of problems around here, the phones are down. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, some arsehole's been up there and cut all the wires. I said, what what do you mean? You mean they would say all that stuff works? She said, yeah, that all works. And all these festoons of wires we'd cut down. And it was done quite unwittingly.
Lamont also has his hands full with another distant location, the island of Phang Na for the man with the golden gun. He refurbishes Scaramanga's junk and supervises the construction on Khao Ping Khan Island. After the man with the golden gun, Ken Adam returns as production designer for The Spy Who Loved Me and brings with him a familiar face.
Peter Lamont was very practical. He could look after a great deal of the construction and also organization problems.
I think he has a marvellous interpretation. He knows how to accomplish something, and I think that's his great value.
Both Peter and Michael, I think, had that incredible ability of coming up with alternate ideas to what normally would be complicated technology.
Lamont also contributes to the film's dialogue.
But I bowled onto the stage and bumped into Ken, and so I said, how's it going? He said, not too well. I said, stuck for words. So what do you mean? So he said, oh, well, there's that bit where Jaws comes in and Roger has got the magnet, you know, and what does he say? I said, I got the perfect line for you.
How does that grab you?
And that's what was used.
Lamont next works as art director for Moonraker.
We had shooting in Venice going on. We had shooting a second unit in Los Angeles, all over Brazil, of course. I had to have people everywhere, and Peter was sort of my main link, linking everything together.
When For Your Eyes Only goes before the cameras in 1981, Ken Adam is unavailable.
When I became the director on For Your Eyes Only, Peter was an automatic choice as production designer.
He had the creative talents to design the sets, but he also was a very hands-on, practical designer.
When he came on board, we were doing a far more kind of realistic type of Bond at this stage. He still wanted to build fantastic eye-catching sets, you know, that were typical of the Bond. They're completely necessary in a Bond to knock people's eyes out.
He knew exactly what he needed to build for John to be able to, or the director, to be able to shoot what he needed to shoot, and didn't build unnecessarily.
The new production designer brings another Lamont onto the crew.
He said, would I like to go and help him out for the summer as being their art department assistant, junior, dog's body, tea server, post boy? And I said, yeah. And that was then my first introduction to locations and also to the idea of foreground miniatures and things like that, because I did a couple there and helping my Uncle Michael to set them out and set them up. That was quite exciting.
Octopussy propels Bond back into a more fantastic world, and Lamont is up to the challenge.
Ken established this idea of the larger-than-life sets and these very elegant sets, and Peter, of course, carried on that tradition.
The Kremlin scene that he built for us on the stage with the revolving podium and the big map of Europe, I think all the actors were inspired by this huge set. It was so impressive.
Lamont also recreates an Indian bazaar on a Pinewood soundstage.
It's just amazing to me what they can do on location, but then also later on in the studio, how they can take something they start on location and then bring it to life in the studio. It's almost seamless.
I think Peter Lamont had such an insight into what was required for a Bond scene, stunning visual effect that certain sets had on an audience. His experience showed through very well, I think, on the design of Octopus's bed.
Oh, it was the most impressive bed. I couldn't believe that anyone could dream of such a thing.
It was designed with the octopus on the headboard with the tendrils stretching out on the bed. And I must say, when I first saw it, it was quite amazing.
For A View to a Kill, Lamont recreates the restaurant of the Eiffel Tower inside Pinewood Studios.
I think Peter Lamont made the restaurant in the film better than it was in reality.
Lamont faces more serious challenges on the film, rebuilding the 007 stage, which is destroyed by fire on the eve of shooting. and creating a vast mine set which can be flooded on demand.
Mostly built of plaster, all the rocks are plaster. The trestles are all real wood. It's structural, as you can see. We're standing actually in a tank now that will be flooded with 4 feet of water. The water, when it floods into that set, will then smash down that structure up there.
It was gigantic. The whole mine, including the carts and everything, were all on this stage. It was unbelievable. I mean, you wouldn't have known that you were on a set. It really looked like the real thing.
More thrills await Lamont and John Richardson at the film's premiere.
As Peter and I got out of the stretch limo, 3,000 girls all started to scream at the same time. Peter and I looked at one another, both thinking, I think, that we'd made it, until one of us looked round and saw that the pop group who'd done the music had just pulled up behind us.
Oh, my goodness, the 2 members of Duran Duran arriving.
After working with director James Cameron on Aliens, Lamont tackles The Living Daylights, where he has to accomplish some bridge building.
We'd found a riverbed, but the thing was it was very, very shallow.
His brother Michael was an expert on drawing and scaling models, etc.
One thing you have to do with miniatures is be accurate, because if it doesn't hide the thing properly that it's supposed to hide, it doesn't work.
And they set up the foreground model, so that when we did our long shots with the horsemen riding over the bridge and also the Hercules, we could get them all exactly to the right scale.
And it really did look pretty special. Worked very well. One up to the art department.
Working in Mexico on License to Kill presents another challenge, refurbishing Churubusco Studios.
There was no phone system, the offices were few and far between. We had to build an art department, we had to build workshops.
For License to Kill, Peter Lamont takes his crew to Mexico and Key West for stunning locations and elaborate sets. Lamont brings past experience to bear on GoldenEye, the debut Bond film of Pierce Brosnan, when he recreates a Russian street on an English backlot.
We've changed that street several times. It takes a little bit of time to do it, but it's amazing what you can get away with.
With each new project, Lamont brings to bear his years of experience.
So many people say, oh, we're CGI, something like that. They all think people see the computers kind of generating all this stuff. It doesn't happen like that.
He's not just a production designer on a Bond film. He is also their sort of factotum, really. A lot of people go to him for information.
He's just an incredibly talented and efficient person who always gets the best out of everybody.
Well, the whole thing is you have to delegate.
He believes in a team.
Very considerate, very kind, taught me a great deal.
I go and see Pete if I've got a problem.
Peter Lamont's greatest strength as a production designer is definitely his organisational skills.
I love working for him.
You know you're in good hands, you know that nothing can go wrong because Peter can do it all.
There's nobody like Peter. I mean, I think he's proven that on Titanic.
Finally, I mean, he was recognized for Titanic with the Oscar, which I think was, you know, was about time.
Peter Lamont returns for The World Is Not Enough.
Never Electric King, James Bond.
His dynamic designs range from a gadget-laden Q-boat to villainous parahawks, from sacred sites to nuclear submarines, from casinos to caviar factories, from mine shafts to mock-ups of the Millennium Dome.
Been there, done that.
From Goldfinger to The World Is Not Enough, Peter Lamont has made outstanding contributions to the James Bond film series.
As far as sets are concerned, they really raised the bar for all the other movies to come.
I think the Bond people have a lot to thank Pete for.
From our point of view, he has sustained the series.